Welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood. Singing in the Rain is one of my very favorite musicals. It's colorful, it's upbeat, it's hilarious, and the stacked cast has great chemistry. The audience gets a sense of excitement as they say, "Oh, Gene Kelly! Who's that guy? Debbie Reynolds, I love her!" You see, even people who have not seen Gene Kelly's movies, they've at least heard his name. And Debbie Reynolds, people are familiar with either through her work or through her daughter, Carrie Fisher. But then you get this third name, and a lot of people draw a blank, which is a shame because his iconic dance number is one of the highlights of the entire movie.
Now you could study Shakespeare and be quite elite, and you could charm the critics and have nothing to eat. Just slip on a banana peel, the world's at your feet. Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh.
The fact is that Donald O'Connor has not had the lasting attention that his talent deserves. Donald O'Connor was born August 28th in 1925 to a circus family. And I'm not using that as a metaphor. It was a literal circus family. His mother was a bareback rider. His father was a strongman and an acrobat. And he just grew up as a performer. He even commented that he learned how to dance shortly after his first birthday and apparently never looked back. He was in a vaudeville show with his brother and his mom. And then from there, he entered film. His first on-screen role was as a specialty act in Melody for Two in 1937. So he was able to start honing his craft from a very young age. However, it wasn't really formal training. It was more of trial by fire. That was fine for vaudeville. But when he got to Hollywood and he ends up being in movies with people who actually were trained in dance, he suddenly realized, oh, I should actually know how to follow a beat and, where to put my feet at times. So he started training as a dancer around 15 so that he could keep up with his co-stars, which is still young in a technical sense, but when it comes to dance training, it's actually quite old. So it was very difficult for him to learn everything because he was well past the age when most people start training. However, he was in several comedies, especially during World War II. Movies like Private Buckaroo in 1942, Mr. Big in 1943, Follow the Boys 1944, and so on. He also found great success starring alongside a talking mule in the Francis series, starting with Francis in 1950, which was followed by Francis Goes to the Races in 1951, Francis Goes to West Point in 1952, Francis Covers the Big Town in 1953, Francis Joins the Wex 1954, Francis in the Navy in 1955. Even at his peak, he often played the second lead. He was not always the star. At his peak of popularity is when he did Singing in the Rain, playing second to Gene Kelly. He'd take a smaller part in this movie and a bigger part in that movie, which was not really what the big stars did, but it's what a working actor did. He'd take the leads where he could get them, take the other parts where he couldn't. It was his job. He was an entertainer. He also had massive dedication. When filming the scene Make 'em Laugh in Singing in the Rain, he actually worked himself so hard that he was hospitalized for exhaustion. Then he gets back to the studio and they're like, Donald, we have bad news. The footage for Make 'em Laugh is it's gone. We can't salvage it. We'll have to do it again. And he said, okay. And then he did it again. And anyone who's seen the movie knows what kind of energy he had to put into that. He had the dedication. He had the talent. He even had the star power, but wasn't really made a star. And I have a theory as to why that might have happened. Hollywood has not really been known for wanting excess, which is strange to say now, considering how many movies they will milk out of a single IP, even after the fans have stopped paying attention. Back in the day, everything cost big money. They didn't have digital cameras. Everything had to be on film. So they wanted as least amount of shots as possible. They wanted to reuse as many costumes as they could. They wanted to reuse as many sets as they could, as many props as they could. And when it came to actors, they had certain actors for certain roles. It all came down to the timing. Donald O'Connor became a child star in 1937. What happened that same year? Danny Kaye came on the scene. Danny Kaye was a singer, dancer, comedian, whole package. He had star power, he had talent, and people noticed. I wouldn't jump straight to saying that Donald O'Connor grew up in Danny Kaye's shadow, though I have a theory that he may have taken some inspiration and influence from him. If you look at the two performances, you can see a lot of similarities in style and mannerisms and type of comedy. Donald O'Connor grew up, and Danny Kaye got older. And so you would think, oh, well, after Danny Kaye has retired, then Donald O'Connor can really shine and he can sort of step up as the big name in singing and dancing and comedy. This would have been in the 1960s. There was a young man named Dick Van Dyke who came on the scene in that time, who also had a very similar style to these two men who came before him, Danny Kaye and Donald O'Connor. And he was big into the singing and the dancing and the comedy, and the same brand across all three men. And just a theory, but I think that Hollywood was thinking, we don't need two Danny Kays. Why, we can put Donald O'Connor over here. And we get a Danny Kaye for the big roles. And then when Danny Kaye retired, it'd say, oh, well, we have Dick Van Dyke. He's a much bigger name than Donald O'Connor. We'll put Dick Van Dyke in the role. And so, just by sheer chance, Donald O'Connor's career was right between these two powerhouse entertainers that had the same style and talents that he did. Not saying that they all had the same level of talent or that they were all good in the same way, but it was the same style. It was the same types of roles. And when you're going to decide, are you going to give the role to Danny Kaye or Donald O'Connor, or are you going to give it to Dick Van Dyke or Donald O'Connor, they're probably going to go with the bigger name, which in this case was not Donald O'Connor. So as Donald O'Connor got older, he focused more and more on TV guest roles, TV movies, small things like that. In the 1980s, he bought a theater where he would perform with his children. So he kind of retired, if you can call it that. His last on-screen appearance was in 1997 on a movie called Out to Sea. And then from that point on, he just did stage tours and comedy clubs and such like that. He said that I won't play an old man because he could still sing and dance. As long as he could do that, he did not consider himself to be old. Alas, it finally caught up to him, and he spent his last days in a charity hospital, which kind of gives an impression on what his finances were like in his later years. Donald O'Connor passed away on September 27th, 2003 at the age of 78. He had been a professional entertainer pretty much his entire life, and yet he's really only known for one thing. My point is, he didn't fade from lasting memory because he was never given a starring role, and it definitely wasn't because he lacked the talent. He faded because the system is designed to have its bright stars and leave everyone else just outside the spotlight. And you know, he wasn't actually bitter about it. He even said that he never set out to be a superstar. The fact is, the only thing Donald O'Connor ever really wanted to do was make him laugh. Thanks for watching. What's your favorite Donald O'Connor project? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell for notification, and I will catch up with you next time.